Welcome to the most important week of the year for the podcast industry. Welcome to Podcast Movement 2025.
Thank you for taking the time. I'm Quincy DeVries. I'm the head of content production at Quill. We're an award-winning branded podcast agency and co-host a podcast analytics and audience insights platform for brands and agencies. So thank you so much for joining us. You're here to join us for a session, How Brands Should Think About Podcast Advertising in 2025, which I know is a hot topic, and we've got a great lineup of panelists to talk to us about that today. So panelists, as I introduced you, if you could just give me a little wave so the audience knows who you are, and we will go from there. So to start, we have Kelly Bissett. She's the Senior Audio Marketing Analyst at Wayfair. We've got Amy Fulbrook. She's the Senior Account Executive and Brand Partnerships at Red Circle. We're also joined by Grace Kane. She's the Director of Business Development at AdsWiz. And we have Janine Wright, who's our moderator, guiding the conversation today. She's an audio growth expert and board advisor at Quill and co-host. But Janine, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. What a great group of folks we have here today. And I know we had advertised this originally as Andy joining us, but we have, we'll call it an upgrade with Grace joining us today, which it was fun to be on a stage with all of you badass women. Yeah. So before we jump into like the topic of the day, maybe we can all introduce ourselves a little bit and say like one podcast that you think people aren't listening to that they should be listening to. You want to kick us off?
Okay. Sure. Yeah, I can go. I'm Kelly. I lead the audio channel at Wayfair. I started the audio program about a year and a half ago, so it's been a very fun opportunity to start a new channel at a company. And I'm sure other brands in the audience can relate. That definitely comes with some challenges, but excited to share. And then my personal favorite podcast, which I think more people should listen to, is Gals on the Go.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, I haven't
a fun
heard
one.
that one. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Grace Kane. I'm Director of Business Development at AdsWiz. We are an end-to-end digital audio advertising platform, and we also have a content management system called Simplecast, which is actually how I joined the company and how I got to know Janine here. We work with both buyers and publishers and creators really of all sizes, so we really kind of run the spectrum in terms of how we can work with different players in audio. Oh, and podcasts. Okay, so this is not one of my clients or a SiriusXM podcast, but if anyone hasn't listened to the telepathy tapes, I feel like I see some nods in the crowd of people who know it. It's one of the most mind-blowing podcasts I've ever listened to, and I think they're creating a season 2, so it's coming out soon.
I love that. Yeah, I'm Amy Fulbrook. I'm with Red Circle. We're a podcast hosting and monetization platform. So we are kind of that middle ground for new and independent creators to host and launch their podcasts, and also within one platform are able to turn around and monetize that. My role specifically is working a lot on the agency side, but with brands and finding those like really unique connections for individual hosts to to monetize their show. So, my podcast. I feel like this is like not an unknown one, but like I've just been binging Criminal lately. I just feel like it's just
Classic.
something new every week, and it's like sometimes true crime, sometimes informative. I'm just a super fan.
I love that. My favorite new podcast that I've just been turned on to is the Handsome podcast. It's Tig Notaro and trying to remember the other names of the comedians, but it's 3 comedians, and sometimes it is so funny that I'm just like bent in half laughing, and what a relief that show is. I just am glad that it's in the world to like give me some joy from the craziness. Well, I'm turning us to the topic of the day. I was reading some data this morning that the podcast advertising industry has seen 28% year-over-year growth, which is fantastic. But I think when you talk to folks in this room, like the sentiment in the space is that it's getting harder. And so why is it that it's getting harder when there's more money? Like, what are the things that people are not doing right that they should be doing now? Or like, in what ways has it changed and we need to evolve with it?
Yeah, I can start.
Yeah.
So I think brands are over prioritizing brand safety to the point where, it's hindering growth and you're not reaching your target audience. Don't get me wrong, I don't think every show is for every brand, but you need to create realistic and flexible guidelines. And I speak about this because it's been my own learning experience over the past 6 months. Ad results had a very candid conversation, and they were like, you turned down 60% of the impressions we put in front of you because our brand team was canceling out entire genres altogether. So that was a big wake-up call. We weren't finding shows that were reaching our reach goals, etc. So we really needed to reevaluate. I think a couple of things that I did was just educating our brand team more on podcasts. So people are self-selecting not only into the content, but how the content is being portrayed and also the host. And then I think if you have a couple you're on the fence about, be candid to the agency or to the network. They'll provide you research or case studies of other brands, and take a phased approach. Do 1 or 2 tests, and the results will ultimately speak for themselves on proof points of how you build out your portfolio from there.
And then do you plan in advance thinking about like the what ifs of what if something happens where my brand is associated with something that I'm not comfortable with? Like do you kind of, I don't know, prepare whatever your crisis management is going to be in advance for something like that to happen?
I think there's always a risk, but we have not run into that at all.
That's
And
great.
I think the agency can speak to that too, where, they don't, if a host does something, it rarely comes back on the brand.
Yeah.
I can kind of jump in there too. I like how you said, like when we look at performance and see what works there. My biggest pet peeve in podcasting is that we gatekeep performance overall. This is a very personalized industry of advertising, which is part of what makes it unique and really special and very vulnerable in a way. I think if you would ask majority of hosts, they want to work with brands and build those long-term partnerships, and that's important to them. They want to bring quality brands to their audience because they've built this audience, and it's theirs and theirs only. But so often we get into like just the standard, 3-time test, and we go through and we do or we don't see performance, and that like gray area of ROI. ROI is how much did I spend? How much did I make? But that gray area in between, we do actually have a lot of control over if we would start opening up that performance information back and forth to the host or the network that's working with it. And I'm not saying that we need to share the entire strategy or that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about standardizing some sort of performative over under on how you're doing throughout the campaign. Well, we have time to create a pivot, to create added value, or to do a re-rate, something that can take a show that's on the fence to a green for you, and turn it around, because ultimately that's what the hosts, I think, really, really want, and that's what the brands want. So, yeah, biggest pet peeve, but performance.
I can jump in more from like our perspective as a tech platform in the industry. So we see a lot of buyers certainly have familiarity and interest with the top shows. And I think that there's always a strategy around buying direct host reads on, the top shows that everyone knows on the charts and have familiarity with the hosts, and that you want your brand to be aligned with. What we encourage buyers to think about is that's sort of your head strategy, but what is like your torso strategy to reach more scale, and how can you do that utilizing not just, I think there's always going to be a place for the premium host-read buy in the industry, but also how much of your spend are you dedicating to reaching a broader audience, maybe across a marketplace, or doing something more programmatically that's not just show specific, but really getting into being able to target. There's so much more technology now around, the data around the shows, that you don't just have to buy based on one, like the name of the show or the host. There's so much more targeting capabilities that are available. So thinking about like that torso strategy and how are you reaching a broader selection of creators and shows that have super engaged audiences and that really have a lot of respect and love that there are certain advertisers buying on them. But so it's still a super valuable, position, even if the show is a little bit smaller.
I love it. Well, Kelly, I love it so much that you're here. I think to have a brand on stage it really gives us some additional perspective to this panel. And Just my quick Wayfair story, if I may myself, I'm an incredibly anxious shopper. I don't enjoy the shopping experience, so I put it off as long as possible, and then I binge when something has to get purchased. And three times, I have received an invitation from Wayfair to join their corporate program because I have purchased so much in one sitting. But so, leveraging the fact that you're here, I mean, maybe we can take a minute for Amy and Grace to say, if I could tell the brand how it is, be totally candid, they're my best friend and I'm not going to hurt their feelings at all. What would I say to the brand of this is what you're doing wrong, or this is what you need to do going forward, or this is the opportunity that you're missing? What would you say?
Oh my God, I love this. I will have this conversation every week. Just call me. I mean, really, what I see a lot of brands doing is focusing on genres and demographics as qualifying filters. I just feel like we need to get beyond that and be comfortable exploring individual hosts and individual audiences for what they are. A really easy example is mothers. Mothers don't just listen to motherhood podcasts. They listen to true crime. They listen to pop culture. And so you're able to reach the right audience, but in maybe an unsuspecting way. I worked with a brand many years ago that was an essential oil brand, and we worked with an essential oil podcast, and they thought this is going to be the best fit ever. Everyone did. We all signed up for it, right? And it absolutely flopped because there was oversaturation. That audience wasn't interested in it anymore. They had already found brands that they had become loyal to, and so while it may on paper have seemed so perfect, it wasn't. When I go to vet our hosts and find hosts for a specific brand, I'm asking really specific qualifying questions, and these don't often come from brands or agencies. And I think that they should, but I'm trying to find out and really identify that host energy or enthusiasm, excitement, because where there's that enthusiasm, there's typically a narrative behind it, and that's the stuff that will ring through to the end result, to the ad read itself. And that's what the listener's going to hear. They're going to hear that authenticity. They're going to get those little goosebumps when their favorite host is telling a story about their life and how they interacted with the product. And I know that I mean, I'm distilling that from pretty high level, but it is something I think, I'd like to see us getting more comfortable looking outside of the box of what we think our target audience is, and really finding those really unique and special moments with hosts and the way that they know that they're going to connect with their specific audience, again, their tribe.
I love that you said moms don't just always listen to mom podcasts. So our target audience is the starter family. So it's 25 to 34, maybe you just bought your first house or you're starting a family. And in order for us to really capture what podcasts we wanted to get into, we asked, how do we bring Wayfair to culture? So we created these micro cultures, and we have everything from Bravoholics, so listening to reality TV shows, to the self-care guru, so positive motivational shows, down to the lawn dads. So what do the dads listen to? And those are more of the smaller, medium-sized podcast shows, and we're seeing great performance and conversions from those shows.
I love that so much.
Me too.
I really do. Yeah. I don't know what your targets are. I don't work with you guys specifically, but even thinking about that, as we were walking up to the stage, I thought about a host that I just off the bat, she'd filled out a form, and I saw that she's moving, a single mom with her child. And it's those
Yes.
moments
Yep.
where you're trying to capture the life moments that are, again, it's all about the narrative.
Okay, Grace, now you tell it like it is.
Okay, so it's interesting because I feel like what I've seen in the last, I've been in this space for 5 years, and it really started, fully as a host-read medium, and it's kind of evolved into this broader ecosystem of how you can buy ads depending on how you really want to, what format you want to use, and what listeners you want to reach. And I think that thinking about your you're kind of creating a custom audience strategy around who you think is listening to different types of shows. And I think something that we've started to do from a technical perspective is actually use tech to create custom audiences. So having like a pixel that you can have a network or even a creator use that finds their listeners in our broader programmatic marketplace to be able to then retarget those exact same listeners and build a custom audience based on, if that show is sold out that performs really well, but those listeners, you still want to reach them, you can do that now. And so there are some things from a tech perspective that I think is really driving this industry forward and allows buyers to be creative. And I think what's interesting is that I work with a lot of creators and ad networks that are trying to figure out new ways to drive revenue. And I think like if the asks are coming from the buyers, the creators are going to listen and they're going to try to figure out how to implement these things. And that's what I've seen a lot from my perspective working with networks. They're like, how do we make sure that we can take those kinds of buys? Or how do we make sure we can package our inventory in this sort of different creative way that's not just a direct show? And so I feel like the more that the buyers push forward, the more that the creators start to evolve their strategies as well, which I think is just like an exciting thing in the industry.
Yeah, that is great feedback. Get the feedback loop going between everyone.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about data and attribution, but I actually want to talk about them separately. So let's talk about data first. It's been interesting as I've been talking to folks here and walking around, it seems like there's a lot of new companies that are really positioning themselves as providing additional data, right? We have Flightcast and Flightpath and now some of what Podscribe is doing and all the different hosting platforms. Do we feel like we have a data problem? Is it at the root of it, we don't have the data that we need? Do you feel as a brand that you don't have the data that you need in order to make the right decisions to spend more, right? And when you're working with creators, do creators not have access to the right data in order to be able to best position themselves with brands or to give themselves the feedback that they need in order to make great content? So maybe you want to go first.
So we are working with Podscribe, and I think the short answer to what we're doing on the data side is we're using pixel-based incrementality. Do I think it's 100% like the gold standard of what I would want? No, not yet. I think randomized control-based incrementality testing is really key. However, we only have synthetic control-based testing currently. So it's all about creating a confidence level with your vendor provider on, how you work with your data science team, evaluate their methodology, feel as good as you can to make business decisions on that.
And on the creator side?
I mean, I will always, again, ask for pass-through data, but I do think that there are other elements to it when we're looking at creators that I take into account when I'm looking for the viability of a show. There are some shows that just hit all the time and some shows that flop. And there's a reason behind it, but you do have to lean into the data in order to figure, or to find the starting point to figure that out. Why are we getting zero renewals on this show? There's something wrong, and so, but without having that information, you're not really able to start anywhere. Podcasters themselves, especially independent podcasters, aren't going to be seeing that. They're creators, and we have to understand that they are creators and they think differently. And I almost love protecting the creator, and as a network, being able to support them in that way and help provide those insights, and help provide those coachable moments to turn things around for them.
Okay, so what about attribution? I mean, what are we thinking good attribution looks like today?
I think good attribution is reaching that confidence level with you and your internal team. We had our data science team very involved with evaluating Podscribe's methodology, and we ultimately worked with them to get it in line with CTV so we could make decisions more apples to apples across the board. And again, I would say reduce the bias on your control. So ask your vendor if they can do AA testing every month, because every month you're creating a new control group, a synthetic control group, so you want to make sure there is no bias going in and you have a very fair test and control.
And what are the most important metrics to you that you're tying back to convincing your business that this is a good investment?
So we look at something called ACNR, which is just the inverse of ROAS. So we have efficiency targets that we're trying to meet. But right now I'm using audio very full funnel, so I'm creating almost a triangle approach, also looking at like brand lift study metrics. Awareness is very important. Unaided awareness. Wayfair has very high awareness when you ask about Wayfair, but asking what's the top home furniture company, we need to work on that, and we're trying to push those through with audio, and kind of our benchmark for that, because unaided awareness is a very long-term metric that you want to drive. We're looking at ad recall on our creative, things like that. How sticky is the ad?
Yeah, that's really important. I love this sticky ad. I have family members that even over this last Christmas bought me something from a brand that I work with, and I was so excited because I assumed that they had gone and used a promo code, because I talk about this all the time, and shouldn't they know? And sure enough, they didn't. So outside of my morbid disappointment, I think small things that we can do, such as just even attribution surveys and understanding the entire lift, is, to your point, is really, really important. You don't always get a clear path from a podcaster to a buyer, but you can see the lift overall, and just understanding that, like, as an industry, our industry works, our medium works.
Yeah, I think beyond the overall like top of funnel brand lift side of things, like we work with a lot of the attribution providers in the industry, so like Podscribe, Claritas. I know that being able to track a conversion from they listened to this show and then now they've bought something on a website, and it might not be a direct link or a promo code that's used, but being able to use that to track back, I think, is very useful on our side.
What are some creative things that creators can do to make ads perform better, more effective? Like, if you're seeing this happen, I mean, you're obviously running tests and you're seeing what works, but you all are also seeing it at scale. Like, are you able to pull out some of the trends as to what little things that they could change in creative to make ads more effective?
Yeah, I don't want to overuse Wayfair here, but I think those life moments are just such a good example. I love the idea of creating anticipation with an ad read, and not just providing a host a singular script that they're going to create 3 different versions of. Allowing a host to talk about their journey with your product or with your brand. They're moving to a new house, and that planning experience for them, and how they imagined that couch or that furniture coming in. That coming through to the next month as that furniture arrives and they're starting to put the final touches on. That beautiful narrative through is something that does create sticky moments for me as a listener myself of podcasts. So I love the idea of taking advantage of the anticipatory read. That would be one for me. I also I love post rolls, and not in a traditional way.
Funny, we'll quote you on that one.
Well, let me finish first.
Okay.
But I feel like post rolls are very underutilized. In just a quick callback. When a listener is in the middle of an episode and they hear something, they're immediately then re-engaged into the episode. And I think about it like getting off the phone with your best friend, and they've told you about this product that they love, and then they send you a text link at the end, like right when you hang up the phone call. And that's the way that I wish we used post roll a little bit more. And I think it would be really easy to is having those like quick 15-second like shout out to the sponsors. Some creators do that really organically already, and bravo to them. But having that included in the campaign, I think just helps that recall that much more. Is that not the post roll that you were hoping for?
No, it's just funny because some people don't want to monetize post rolls, but I think that is actually a wonderful and creative way to use it, and it is a good way for a creator to think about using post roll, that is going to drive the return on the overall campaign that they're kind of building into their show. So
Kelly, tell me more about what you've learned about what creative works, what people should be doing.
Yes, we found success with personalization there's so many ways you can personalize the ad. One of the approaches we recently took was personalizing to the context the listener was listening in, specifically on the platform itself. So if you think of Spotify, for example, they have very strong brand loyalty. So we wanted to sort of borrow that brand loyalty in an authentic way. At Wayfair, we say, your home is an expression of yourself, and Spotify does that really well with, music expresses you, your personalized playlist. So we had our ads, really touch on that personalization piece, and we've seen good results from that. And then maybe on the other end for host endorsements, I would say personalize the host endorsement ad. So for September, we have 2 talking point scripts running. We have one centered around like tailgating essentials and how do you make your favorite living room viewing sports cave. And we're sending those to a lot of the sports shows. And, we have a separate one for fall decor going maybe to more society and culture-based shows.
I like it. There's been a lot of conversation around video at this conference, and I'm sure we're going to touch on that also. But before we get there, what are some things that you think people are doing well that really work just in audio? Like ways that people can lean in even more to the audio medium?
Yeah, for host endorsements, I think it offers a very unique long-form content opportunity to provide an educational moment. So maybe something you're not touching on other forms of advertisements. A question I ask myself is what's one problem our customers are facing and how can I use hosts to get excited about that and talk about it? I think at Wayfair, we offer so many products. It can be overwhelming in your search to find maybe the perfect couch or, the perfect curtains, something like that. So really working with hosts to help solve that problem. We trialed that out with iHeart and Bobby Bones, where he talked about, how he found his perfect product amongst the challenges of a virtual endless aisle, let's say. So I think, you start on a show, start with awareness, and then after 6 months, offer some more, insider tips to your listeners.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, audio and podcasts, I should say podcast, not audio, but podcast is unique for that reason, and it's why I love it. But I think using it as a springboard to connect to other mediums, once you've found that group of shows that work, it's not the show, it's the audience that you're connecting with. And so finding those unique opportunities from the host's perspective. And again, like so much of it can be very personal, and asking the hosts very specifically, like, what do you think will resonate with your audience? It may not be social, it may not be the video aspect. And typically, like, a host is going to know based on the type of brand or the campaign that they're running to.
I think that on the unique aspect of audio is that it's the intimacy of it with the listener. It's like you're in their ear. It's you're listening to a story. There's no other distraction going on, really. And I think that there's such a trust that's built between the host and their audience that I think you can't really replicate that. Even in video, I don't think, even if it's a host read, it's not the same level of intimacy because it's not coming kind of like directly into your headphones for some reason. But yeah.
Well, Kelly, what are you learning about podcast video and what works most effectively in podcast video?
Yes, so I will say that is still a journey we are taking. We were very much, stick with audio only. And we're slowly now realizing we are going to get left behind if we don't start doing simulcast and more video. So we are pushing for more video in Q3 and Q4.
And what are you seeing so far in trends? Of what are people doing well with podcast video, and what kind of gaps are you still seeing?
Well, when you go over to podcast video and simulcast, you get to kind of recapture the embedded magic, which is something that's really interesting. I think so many people are placing dynamic, which I has a place, so does embedded. But so you're able to get the long tail audience reach for that. But you can also do dynamic video too. So I think it really depends on the type of show and what you're able to deliver there.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to see that transition from basically the entire industry was convinced to do dynamic ad insertion in the last 5 years. And then in the last year, it's like, actually, if if you do video, you need to embed it into the, you know, to embed the read into the file. And so there's just this inherent, like, I feel like conflict that's happening right now, and we'll see how the tech side of things evolves and pushes forward. But I think like something that our team thinks about from an audio buying perspective is that it's actually very complementary to buying CTV, because generally you're not going to be consuming those things at the same time. And so, you know, I think that there's incremental lift in terms of buying both like a CTV and audio side of things. So.
Well, that's going to be the final word. Thank you so much, ladies, and thank you so much to Quill and co-hosts for bringing together this panel.